And here came the question and answer by Reagan, and he won 49 states. This one answer ended it.
You already are the oldest president in history, and some of your staff say you were tired after your most recent encounter with Mr. Mondale. I recall yet that President Kennedy had to go for days on end with very little sleep during the Cuba Missile Crisis. Is there any doubt in your mind that you would be able to function in such circumstances?
Not at all, Mr. Truitt, and I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit, for political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Now, that was at the end of the campaign. All the history of this we have. They brought it up again and again. Now the mob, because it's one of their radical leftist, socialist, extremist friends, and there's really not a dime's worth of difference between Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden. I told you, a lot of it had to do with Bernie supporting murdering dictators and their regimes. They both are for open borders. They want to end all deportations. Both of them, are saying they're going to raise taxes on the middle class. They both want to get rid of the lifeblood of our economy and put restrictions on oil and gas. They both, want to give health care that we pay for illegal immigrants. The same on taxpayer-funded abortions and free college and more government health care. Great.
If you agree with me, go to Joe 30330 and help me in this fight. I watched what happened when the kids from Parkland marched up to, and I met with them, and then they went off to up on the hill when I was vice president. They went off the hill to go into those neighborhoods. We got to let them know who we are. We choose unity over division. We choose science over fiction. We choose truth over facts. Words that stun the nation, and I would argue, I know, shocked the world. International leaders spoke about it. You had people like you had people like the former chairman and leader of the party in Germany. You had Angela Merkel. We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
Let me just interrupt this montage, and we'll put the whole thing that you just were hearing on Hannity.com. Let me just play the new stuff. Just in the 2020 campaign cycle. Just that. Now it's long, and I can't play this every day anymore because it's getting longer by the minute. Got longer again this weekend. I couldn't believe it. You can't even. Yes, we are the Biden-Obama Democrats. Huh? Okay. We can only reelect Trump. Okay. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men and women are, the thing. The thing. It's nuts. Listen.
If you agree with me, go to Joe 30330. I'm here to ask you for your help. Where I come from, you don't get far unless you ask. My name's Joe Biden. I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate. Look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other guy. Give me a look, though, okay? We choose truth over facts. Play the radio. Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night. The phone. Make sure the kids hear words. No man has a right to raise a hand to a woman. We have to just change the culture, period, and keep punching at it and punching at it and punching at it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. But if Donald Trump is reelected, Freudian slip, Donald Trump does pose an extra threat to this. It's not hypothetical. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by the thing. Words that stun the nation, and I would argue, I know, shocked the world. International leaders spoke about it. You had people like you had people like the former chairman and leader of the party in Germany. You had Angela Merkel. Just like in my generation, when I got out of school, that when Bobby Kennedy and Dr. King had been assassinated in the 70s, late 70s, when I got engaged. My son, my deceased son, was the Attorney General of the United States, and before that, he was a federal prosecutor in one of the largest offices in the country, in Philadelphia. Look, tomorrow's Superstar Tuesday, and I want to thank you all I tell you what, I'm rushing ahead, aren't I?
That's something I've heard from some voters, maybe not at your events, but details.
No, but the details are irrelevant. I just spoke at Dartmouth on health care at the medical school, or not, I guess I wasn't actually on the campus, but the people from the medical school were at I want to be clear. I'm not going nuts. I'm not sure whether it was a medical school or where the hell I spoke, but it was on the campus. And folks, all those Democrats who won against incumbents, from Jimmy Carter to a guy named Clinton to a guy named Obama, my good friend, guess what? They had overwhelming African-American support. Although I had met Sully and his wife at an event in Los Angeles back in the spring, late fall, late spring, late winter, early fall, anyway, you know what I mean. You must register that weapon. You must register it. When you register it, the likelihood of it being used diminishes exponentially. One of the things I'm proudest of is getting control of the Paris Climate Accord. I'm the guy that came back after meeting with Deng Xiaoping and making the case that I believe China would join if we put pressure on them. Why in God's name should someone who's clipping coupons in the stock market pay a lower tax rate than someone who, in fact, is, like I said, a school teacher and a firefighter? Chipping and support our campaign. Text Joe to 3. Excuse me, I got to get this right. Joe to 30330. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing. And turn this primary from a campaign that's about negative attacks into one about what we're for, because we cannot get reelect. We cannot win this reelection. Excuse me. We can only reelect Donald Trump. So, folks, you want to nominate a Democrat, a lifelong Democrat, a proud Democrat, an Biden-Obama Democrat.
As our latest, an Biden-Obama Democrat, and the only one can be reelected is Trump. We will reelect. I mean, part of it's funny, but it's not, because now it's serious, and everybody's talking about it being serious. It's not just me now. Well, Hannity, you're being unfair. You're taking this to new This is a new low in presidential politics. No, it is the hardest job in the world. It's just a fact. It is the hardest job in the world. And if a candidate is not up to this physically, doesn't have the stamina, doesn't have the alertness, the focus, the mental toughness needed to do this critical job to the best of his ability, that is an issue. That is part of the normal vetting process. It just is. He is, he doesn't even know sometimes what day it is. Super Thursday. No, Tuesday. Or what state he's in. And it's not that hard to remember what state you are in, or maybe if you're really tired, once, maybe twice, but it's happening every day with this guy. And that's a big problem. We're endowed by the thing, the thing. We're endowed by the thing being God above the creator of everything. Now, the media is going to ignore it. They're going to ignore quid pro quo Joe. They're going to ignore Hunter. They're going to ignore the Biden mob family. We got another story with Peter Schweitzer coming up. They're going to ignore his failure of Obamacare. Now, 37% of the country has one Biden-Obama exchange choice, to use Joe's words. They only have one. They only have one exchange option. Everybody's paying more. Millions lost doctors. Millions lost their plans. Millions. Now he wants to go further into this. How about, can we examine their H1N1 failures? Because they were failures. They didn't take the bold steps that, in fact, this president had taken. Now you got, this was, I think, a Politico piece where I saw this, where they're literally writing about he did a 7-minute rally, speaking for a sparse 7 minutes in St. Louis. You know why? Because they don't have any confidence he can get through it at all. Kind of scary. Now, what did they do to Reagan? Well, we can go to October of 1984, the McNeil-Lehrer report. His doctors have pronounced Mr. Reagan, this is Judy Woodruff at the time, fit since he recovered from the 1981 assassination attempt, but there have been moments during televised news conferences, for example, where the president, meaning Reagan, seemed less alert and less in control of the subject matter at other times. Goes on. Reporters noticed it when he's trying to answer questions from the press. Mr. Reagan seemed to need a little coaching. And then it goes on from there. And then they play something of Reagan. The system is still where it was with regard to the progressivity, as I've said. Not a great answer. Okay. They asked the question. George McGovern was saying in the lead up to that next debate, he said, well, there's no question Mondale showed a much greater degree of alertness, information on issues, capacity to recall the points that he wanted to make. I frankly thought the president appeared confused. He was inarticulate. He was forgetful. He manifested many of the qualities of a person who is getting older. This isn't a criticism of the president. We all want to be old. That's the one thing we share in common. I don't want to be old. I don't share that in common with anybody. Who wants to be old? Anyway, Woodruff then goes, well, let me ask you, Senator McGovern, on this. It's one thing to be off, to have an off night, as many in the White House are now saying that the president was, but it's something else for one's age to catch up with one. Can't you make a distinction between the two? McGovern, let me put it this way. I'm not questioning the president's physical vigor. I'm sure that he probably would do well in an arm wrestling contest, as he has said here earlier today, but that's not really the test of one's mental alertness or your capacity to remember the fundamental facts that you need to have in mind. And this all happened. All happened. Oh, you mean they questioned Reagan's mental alertness? Yeah, and then Reagan knocked it out of the park when he took on that Mondale in that second debate. You know, it is sad when you see lying going on the level we're watching. Yeah, let me tell you what this whole corona madness is all about. Remember, you know, it was Bill Maher. I want a recession. I know, because it gets rid of Trump. I don't care if it hurts people. I don't care. You got one MSDNC expert predicting a higher mortality rate if coronavirus becomes widespread in the U.S. There's science contributor, some guy, Dr. Fair. 80% of the U.S. population would survive. 15 to 20% mortality rate amongst individuals that are elderly or have underlying condition if coronavirus becomes widespread. You know, in all the years that you go back to 2009 and 10, they never had a travel ban. They never had a quarantine. We just noticed a virus with pneumonia-like symptoms, this one, on December 30th of last year. We only identified corona, similar to SARS in some ways. We only noticed that one on January 7th, fully identified it. President put the travel ban in effect on January 31st. He had quarantine, hadn't happened in decades. Then you got Chucky Todd. Corona could be to Trump like the Iranian hostages were to Carter. Joy Reid over MSDNC. Children of Trump supporters are a coronavirus threat to your children. Surgeon General schooled fake Jake Tapper. Newsbusters picked up on that. It was bad. You got a museum director in Texas, apparently taxpayer dollars, posting on Facebook a message. I hope every single one of you pieces, blah, 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 every single one of you that votes Republican, I hope you die today. Why are we paying this guy? They're weaponizing and politicizing now a virus. I don't think the virus discriminates against Republican, Democrat, or conservative or liberal. You would think this is the one thing that they could say, you know what, the president made the right call, stepped in early. The travel ban likely prevented many from contracting the disease. Now, there's a poll out there. Most Republicans now see this for what it is. This is just a weaponized political agenda for the president. President has allocated all the money that they possibly have. My sources, you just listen to the vice presidents. If anyone would ever listen, he's given the answers, what they're doing, preparing for, as this spreads, what's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? And all the money and resources will be available. You got crazy people in a coronavirus brawl over toilet paper. I mean, it's all being whipped into a frenzy. People's minds are being whipped into a frenzy. Now, I can give you some facts that the mob is never going to give you. Anthony Fauci, is right when he said on Meet the Press this weekend that it's overwhelmingly hitting old people. And the ones that are subject to potentially dying or have a risk of old people with compromised immune systems or underlying other conditions. They're the ones. He had written a piece in, where was it?